Recording in progress.
Round of the roll call, please.
Steve DeBrum,
Present.
Pam Ibeck,
Present.
Alice English, Ann Baird, Bob Mooney,
Present.
James Grunsky,
Present.
Mike Morowitz,
Present.
Paul Oster,
Present.
Oscar Valdez,
Present.
Summer Panino, present. Angel Ann Flores,
Present.
Paul Hernandez, Steve White, Amy Starr, present. Herman,
That concludes the roll call. Just as a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue through the process this evening, when we come to the map drawing process, that will be those up here that are on the dais. The alternates will not be able to draw any lines or have any input through this evening's program. So that's just a reminder. Next item on the agenda is the minutes from the 9/29 meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the minutes? Any additions or corrections to the minutes? I have a motion to approve. Properly moved and second to move on the minutes on 9/29. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Are there any additions or deletions to this evening's agenda? Anything online? And then we'll move on to public comment. Mr. Bollinger?
Nothing online at this time.
Okay. Mr. Fowler?
Good evening, Chair. So yes, we did receive some public comment through the redistricting email account. I will summarize those for you, excluding off-topic spam and administrative notifications. We have 4. 1, we received an email from Nancy Calistini recommending that San Joaquin County U.S. Representative District be represented by 1 U.S. representative. Secondly, we received an email from Brian Waddle asking if the map submissions need to be error-free. Third, we received an email from Jacqueline Shaw requesting the number of APNs, these are parcels with rural voters, asking which ones are agricultural. In a subsequent email, Ms. Shaw included a map and explained that it represented agricultural, industry, and veterans. And finally, we received an email from Nicole Ames with comments and questions about housing assistance. We also received proposed maps submitted by the public, and we received a number of them that the Redistricting Partners consultant will review in today's presentation under the publicly submitted maps. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, the RAC member disclosures. Do we have any disclosures? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Baird? Very much. Any other disclosures? Beck?
I gave a presentation on redistricting on October 6th, Thornton Community in their community center. And in addition, I have talked with term limited board supervisors, Wynn as well as Miller, as well as Wynn's chief of staff to hear their thoughts on how effective the current districts are.
Ms. Nybeck, anyone else? And we're going to put this together with the community contacts. I have two. I'm going to be meeting, once I get the phone call from the residents at Del Webb in Manteca. They would like to gather some information on the redistricting. I'm just waiting for their call in order to make that contact and have the ability to talk to them. On Thursday, October 28th, I will be speaking to Manteca Sunrise Kiwanis and giving them the information in regards to the redistricting as it applies to the Board of Supervisors in San Joaquin County. Okay, anyone else? Yes, Benino.
I also spoke with
Have anyone else? No one online?
One online at this time.
Thank you very much. We are going to move to item 8. This is the Voting Rights Act, Section 2 discussion. Ms. Merrill, come forward and provide us the information that you have for us this evening.
Good evening, everybody. So excited to finally be at the meeting where we're really doing the maps. So this is it. This is our big moment. Okay, so I'm going to do a pretty quick presentation. The goal of the presentation is to make sure that as you move forward with the drawing of the maps, that each decision that you make is informed. I also want to make sure that you know that you're supported in those decisions by both myself and redistricting partners in terms of ensuring that each decision that you make is in fact compliant with all of the various things we have to be compliant with. So that's the goal. So, and some of this you already know. I'm going to reiterate it to the extent that it helps us, the Voting Rights Act puts it in context. So we know to successfully redistrict the county, we need to adopt boundaries for the districts that are substantially unequal in population. So, right, we understand we've got an increase in population. So what we're doing is we are now increasing the population within each district, and those need to be substantially equal. So that's kind of required item 1. But as we do that, we also have to comply with the U.S. Constitution, the California Constitution, and the Federal Voting Rights Act. So that is a lot of layers that we're going to consider each time we consider a map. So I provided you a memo, and this is just kind of a frosting on top of the memo that is the cupcake. So we'll kind of look at it that way, okay? So what we did as in the Office of County Council is we had an analysis performed of the census data and of the historical voting patterns within the county. So after that analysis, we are now taking that analysis and we're working directly with redistricting partners so that we can advise you and ultimately advise the board to make sure that all of that historical information in the census analysis is included. So the analysis showed us that to avoid a Section 2 Voters' Rights Act violation, we need to draw District 1 very carefully. So I am not here to give you, every bit of the Voters' Rights Act, not to be flippant, but we can Google that, right? My job is to take that Voters' Rights Act and make sure you understand what it means for you in this mapping. So that's what we're doing. So that's what the analysis showed us, is that we have we have a potential for a violation in District 1, and that's what we're going to be really careful about. The other districts' populations don't set us up for that same kind of risk. We're going to advise you appropriately and carefully, but I don't expect any of those other districts to have any concerns for us. So we're really focused on District 1. So we're going to go ahead and I have a very quick slideshow again that's just going to kind of support us. So for District 1, there's currently a Latino voting age population of 47.7%. And at that percentage, the Latino vote in District 1 is being heard. So that district is working. It is currently compliant under the Voting Rights Act. So we press the big button one time. There we go. Mo told me that. Big button one time. Okay. So as we redraw District 1 with that risk in mind, right? That's the context within which we're living. We have 3 requirements that are in place. So as we draw District 1, we want to consider these 3 requirements. So that's what I'm going to go through quickly. They are, in essence, in the memo. I'm also going to verbally give them to you, so we're going to use all of our learning types tonight. That's the plan. All right. So first, the Latino voting age, like I said, is working, 47.7%. So our first rule, our first requirement, the first constraint we're going to operate under is that the Latino eligible voter percentage in District 1 should not be reduced. The reason it should not be reduced in Voters' Rights Act terms is that it's an effective opportunity district. So what does all this mean? Again, we're going to go through this quickly. Latino is defined in the census. So that means people who reported, and it's a little nuanced, but essentially people who reported Hispanic or Latino regardless of race. They self-reported that in the census. That is what Latino means in terms of the census. And of course, in terms of eligible voters, those are people who are legally can cast ballots. So that's the percentage we're really focused on. So this requirement means that to remain compliant, we cannot reduce that percentage below 47.7%. And if possible, what we want to see, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, is we actually want to strengthen it. So we want to preserve and strengthen that Latino voting age population to avoid a violation of Section 2. So what is an opportunity district, right? I'm saying it's operating, it's working as an opportunity district. So what is that? Essentially, an opportunity district is when a district has a minority group. In this case, we're obviously talking about Latinos, and they have shown in past elections that they are able to successfully, as a group, elect candidates of their choice. We see that in District 1, and if we drop that percentage, there's an assumption that they are not going to be successful in electing a candidate of their choice, and therefore, if we drop the percentage down, what we're doing is we're diluting their vote, and that is where we end up in a Section 2 analysis problem, or a Section 2 violation problem. So to get into more detail on that, but I'm not going to, that's where you would look in the memo and you'd identify the Gingell's test. The Gingell's test gets us, we walk through that analysis, we end up where District 1 is, and then we realize that's where we're trying to preserve an opportunity district. So I'm always happy to answer more detailed questions on that. The memo kind of breaks it down. We're breaking it down even further. Okay, so the second requirement when we are redrawing District 1 is the district needs to remain an opportunity district, right? So that means we need to be 47.7% Latino voting age or higher. All right. And there is a to what percentage, essentially, this is included for your information. The key information is there at the bottom. District 1 is effective, so it doesn't need to exceed 50. We need to identify where it works. It works at 47.7, and we want to see a percentage higher than that. So 47.7 is essentially our floor. In some districts, we don't see it in District 1. When you don't see that they're an effective voting district, what you have to do is you both have to increase that percentage, and then you also have to actually buffer that, sometimes up to, there are court cases that have it up to the mid-50s, and what you're doing then is you're buffering for actually low voter turnout, and there's some various other factors. So it actually can be a very complicated analysis. We don't see that in District 1, so I'm just laying out for you the floor is 47.7 for the Latino voting age for District 1, and we want to see it, if possible, up higher. I think what we're going to see tonight are maps that get you into the 50.3, 50.8 range, and that's what we want to see. That's going to strengthen and preserve that opportunity district for the Latino voting age population. Okay. So now the third one, and this is kind of like in the land of kind of obvious, but I put it in anyway. So we know that we have an increase in population. As we increase that population, we have to do it in a way that also increases, of course, that Latino voting age population. But to state what you guys are experts in now is when we do that, we have to increase it in a way that, of course, considers uniting neighborhoods and COIs, right? So back to the beginning, we're back to COIs, right? So that's where we're just going to flag to you. If you just say, hey, we're going to increase the population and that gets our percentage, we also then have to do that in a way that protects, unites neighborhoods and COIs. So how is this going to work, right? You don't need to become experts in the Voting Rights Act. So the way that it's worked is I have worked with redistricting partners. So the maps that are going to be presented to you tonight are compliant. And so the way that we've operationalized this is we've gone ahead and put that set of requirements into the maps that you'll be presented with tonight. The reason that we want to flag it, give you a little bit of education so that you're making those informed choices, is that as you go to potentially modify those maps based on, you know, obviously you're informed, as you make changes to those maps, I want you to be aware of this. So if we say, hey, flag on the play, right, we're looking at those percentages, you have an understanding of what that means. And, you know, I want you to remember that both redistricting partners and I are here to answer those questions. So if you say, I really want to see this shift, or I really want to see this, we certainly can look at it and we'll consider it, but we are always working within the constraints of the Constitution, including the Federal Voting Rights Act. So I am happy to take any questions, or if there's anything you want to focus in on, I'm happy to discuss that further, but I am open to any questions that you have.
Just a question I have, it's more of an educational question, I guess, and for myself and the entire dais, is we're going to be provided information coming from redistricting partners, but when we look at the group of Hispanic population of the voting age, are they pretty much concentric in one location, or are they spread out through the entire district, or all pretty much in one location? Is that?
So I'm definitely going to hand that over to the demographers. We do have that information.
I'm just curious.
So I'm going to let the smart people talk, and I'm going to sit down.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Answer your question, they're mostly, they're mostly concentrated, in a lot of the District 1s that you'll see with the draft maps in, central and southern Stockton. There are pockets all throughout the county, but, you really, when you draw a compliant Section 2 seat, you want it to look like other seats. You don't want to have lots of fingers and legs and arms and beaks and strange shapes to go.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons we drew the District 1s in most of the plans, very compact, and kind of to act as a hub or a center point that all the other districts kind of rotate around. So that's a little more answer than your question, but.
No, and I think it's important because it's just, you know, what is the concentration? Are we looking at one thing? Because it becomes difficult, and I know that, understand that you're going to provide that information to us. But as we tend to, if we were going to look at it from the dais and we start to look at those numbers, and all of a sudden things start to spread, and then all of a sudden you do not have contiguous lines, and we get ourselves into problems. And I know that you're not going to let that happen.
If I may just clarify through the chair, when I'm talking about 47, I'm talking about District 1.
Oh, I
as it
understand.
exists. Okay, so we're talking district by district. So
Right.
that answer was kind of both in regards to District 1 and then the county, but okay, so I just wanted to be, I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you very much for clarification. Is there any other questions? Yes, sir. Mr. Oster.
I did have a question about the potential jeopardy that may be facing this process if we are presented with 3 draft maps, as we have been tonight, with 50.8%. All 3 of them, I think, have the same percentage. If through the process of moving the lines, we drop closer to the current floor of 47.6, whatever it is, in other words, if we move off of 50.8 for some other reason, for a reason that is supported by the process, but that does reduce it from 50.8, is there any jeopardy to us or to the process? I'm thinking more legally, I think we're going to switch out here, tag. If we decide on a map that ends at 48.5, is someone going to come forward later and say, the Redistricting Commission was presented with 3 maps that had us over 50%, they brought us down to 48, and that by itself is a cause for some action?
It's a great question. And I appreciate that you're contextualizing it in terms of a risk, right? Because anytime a lawyer stands and gives you advice, we're giving you a risk analysis, right? We live in the gray area. So to answer your question, anyone can sue anyone. The question is, will they win? And my answer to you is, if that hypothetical happened, we were presented with 50.8 maps for District 1, and we dropped down to 48, and here's why, and we have a good record of it at the RAC, and the district is otherwise compliant, meaning it is compact, it is we're close to the ideal population, we're meeting all of those layers of requirements that we were talking about, then although they could make a challenge, I don't believe they would be successful. So what I would say is I think in that scenario, the county is very defensible. I think the district would be found to be compliant with the Voting Rights Act. Now, if we had no reason at all and we didn't have a basis and we said, we just want to cut this out because it makes the shape of a dinosaur, we probably would not be defensible, right?
Arbitrary and pernicious.
And I have used redistrictor to draw a dinosaur, so you can do that. It was not compliant with Section 2. So that is where we're going to really try and make sure that we have a clear record as to the decisions that we're making. But I do believe in that hypothetical, you would be defensible and we would be compliant. I guess what I want to just end with too is that when we are asking these questions and playing through these hypotheticals, what the Voting Rights Act does, its entire purpose, is to ensure there's no action in redistricting and other various actions that dilute the vote. So we won't want to dilute the vote. Now, so we can move those percentages, but we're not going to see a dilution to the point that it's not an effective district in terms of opportunity definitions.
Thank you for the fullness of your answer.
It's a great question.
Anyone on the dais that has any other questions? Anyone online? Yes, Mr. Mooney.
Yeah, you always put this up there, well, somebody could sue it, sue for, what are the odds of somebody, or what would the advantage to somebody suing be? I mean, except for representation. I mean, is there really a founding to file a suit and spend the money for it?
Oh, well. Oh, you and I should talk offline. No. So remember, any challenge to the Voting Rights Act is a position taken to protect the vote, to ensure that something didn't dilute the vote. So the claim would really need to encapsulate that the county's action took a minority group who was being effective, again, was effectively able to adopt a candidate of their choice, and we took actions to specifically dilute their vote. And that would need to be the basis of their claim. And if that happened, what we would be forced to do is there would be a lawsuit, and we would be in a holding pattern, and there would be certainly costs to the county, but also potential impacts on elections and actions that we take being undone and having to go through the process again under generally the optics within a court battle. So there is actually, there is a place in California, is it Kern? It just went through this. And so in fact, they drew one that was challenged, and in fact, they didn't have a good basis for the challenge. They then had to redraw them within the context of a court case, which is, it's a Herculean effort by a jurisdiction. So we don't want to do it. We also would never want there to be a finding that we've made a decision that's diluted the vote in any way. So we're particularly careful about it.
Well, I guess my point is if we don't go below that 47, as long as we keep it above that 47 where it is now, probably be okay, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's both the letter of the law and the spirit of law. And so what we're going to be really advocating is that while the letter of the law, there are court cases that interpret the Federal Voting Rights Act, so we're always very careful about those. Those are very clear that we want to see it both maintained and strengthened. And when I say that, I would like to see, I'd like to see us bolster that just a little bit, because we do have court cases that tell us that we are always needing to be cognizant of things like low voter turnout and other factors that are listed in your memo, where we do see that in District 1. So we would like to see it preserved and strengthened. So I'd like to see a little bit of a buffer there. I think that makes us even more defensible in any challenge, because it really shows that we wanted to ensure that no vote was diluted.
Okay, thank you. I just like to say part of it was just, somebody really want to challenge some of this stuff? I mean, I don't know.
I think absolutely they do.
Maybe.
And it's not always about whether it pencils out, right? There are certainly, pots of money for federal suits or suits against counties, and we see it, they're funded in various ways. So unlike in business practice where you say, oh, no, well, that doesn't pencil out, so you do a risk analysis based on the likelihood that somebody is economically going to make that decision. Instead, what we see in redistricting and voting rights challenges is there may be a regional, a state, some kind of pattern that a group is trying to forward. So we certainly don't want to try and predict that. So we're just gonna be hecka compliant.
Any other questions? And by the way, give anyone any reason to sue, and they will sue. Been there, done that. Okay, before we go on, is there anyone in the audience that would like to make any comments? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward. Yes, ma'am. Up to the on.
I need to state my name. What would you like?
Yeah, name, please.
Yes, Terry Hedden. I live in Lodi. I was wondering, I attended the last meeting and had to leave early, but are we going to be able to compare some old maps tonight to what you've redrawn or what you're submitting this evening?
Mr. Chaffee, will we have the old maps to review?
So the idea is that we've basically looked at all the publicly submitted maps and created three drafts that come from those, and we can compare and contrast if we'd like, but they're all three are based on publicly submitted maps.
Right, but we have no comparison. I mean, if we had an opportunity. Pardon?
Oh, you don't have.
So we can look at current other district options as well.
I think
have been
you were
submitted.
just wanting to make the comparison of the old map versus what is being presented.
Yes,
Yes,
that's,
we,
yeah.
yes, there will be
That's my
comparisons.
question.
Current district versus what's being proposed.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Second of all, do we have any reporters here from any newspapers this evening?
I do not see one, but that doesn't mean that there's not one
And
yet.
if there's transparency for all of this, is there a reason there are no reporters?
Well, you know, I could go to Fowler, but he and I just had that discussion. Information has been sent to the proposed meeting dates, times, et cetera. I've talked to one reporter, and I would expect that, you know, I would have gotten a call from him, got nothing. So, okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, please come forward. By the way, thank you very much for you people showing up.
My name's Matt Legallo. I live on south of Delbert in District 1. And I'm sort of like some clarification. I'm hearing the word dilute, and I'm sort of thinking manipulate. And diluting the vote versus manipulating the vote, the choice of words.
Merrill?
Specifically language from the Federal Voting Rights Act. So we are both interpreting the act itself and then the court cases that have interpreted various times where a redistricting has been challenged based on the Voting Rights Act, and that is specifically a word that's used in the act and in the court cases. And really, it gets down to, and we covered this in some of the workshops, but it really comes down to the term of gerrymandering or gerrymandering, where there was, in fact, court-determined manipulation of maps in order to weaken someone's position. And so what the Voting Rights Act is intending to do is to ensure that we as the government entity are not making those determinations to manipulate or dilute certain groups' votes. So I'm gonna, hold on, let me give you the mic, because right now we have people who are listening and they're not able to hear you, so we can hear you, but you're not actually in the record. So I'm gonna hand you this.
Thank you.
My concern is with, want to not dilute the vote. Well, someone's going to lose something someplace. I know we're trying to only address District 1. But this thing might look awful spotty. I don't know how you're going to end up with a straight edge anywhere. I'm just concerned with that. He's got one big battle ahead of them, because are we going to end up with blocks and looking like a zipper going down the road. Someone's gonna construe that as manipulation or dilution, whatever the definition is. And, you know, I'm just a little concerned with where we might be going.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else? Ms. Shaw? Welcome.
Thank you that I've been able to submit app and that some of you have helped in research, like Glenn and Steve. The questions are so obvious as to why is it the farmers, the number one agricultural, number one economic driver, paying for everything with county taxes, is not represented. The same with the city of Lodi. We don't vote for them to keep going on to fertile soil. If I may, my great uncle came from Scotland, and with maps, he picked the most fertile soil, McCullough River. Sure enough, 3 to 4 different ways they're trying to take our water. So, how do we have the farmers' vote count? I mean, extreme is in communist China. Obviously, the farmer doesn't count anymore, and yet we have fresh food crops for 50% of the nation, much from here. So that's the reason we found there are 20,900 parcels. That's what Glenn found. And then I researched veterans. We have 6 different veteran offices, but we don't have a count for veterans. And the thing with farmers is if we counted parcels, well, each parcel doesn't just have one owner. There can be 2 or more, and there can be corporate board memberships, wineries, vegetable processing, nut processing, all these workers, and yet we're falling into that ball game where our votes don't count. So that's a reason tested an egg. I use the words used in the planning, agriculture industry, or actually farmers industry, and veterans, because veterans are usually protecting the property. And voters. So that's the reason it was proposed that we, excuse my dry throat with allergies, that we found with veterans, there are 6 different departments, but they don't even know how many veterans we have in San Joaquin County. So we should count. I think most of us agree. So that was the reason I tried to say, well, it's green outside of the towns and rurals. Okay, well, that's just acreage. Our count. And somebody can help with the count on parcels. And then with veterans, they have 6 different districts. So the easiest way is to simply consider adding a supervisor, a 6th supervisor, to count all the farmers, the industry, and maybe even the veterans who have no count. And those are the 2 COI. So I came to listen, and you've got a tough job.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to answer about the 6th district, that would take a vote of the entire county in order to make that happen, number one, and then that has to come for the Board of Supervisors. Ourselves, this panel up here does not have that authority to do that. number one. Number two, as we continue to move this process forward, and even if it did, it'd have to go through that complete process and get us to where we need to be. So that will not happen as we continue to look at 6. And then even if it did, it's going to require that 7th district, because you're not going to have even number of supervisors as you go forward.
Well, the gentleman had suggested in San Mateo, that it was suits. Well, who should be suing? Probably the farmers. That's what my CPA says. He says, you're getting paid less for the crops, but you're getting charged more taxes. And we have no vote. We don't have vote in city council. We don't have vote in the county. Except, nothing wrong with Chuck. Chuck, we voted for him because he was a CHP, protecting the property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Seeing none, we are going to move on to the next item, communities of interest and submission summaries and trends. That is Mr. Chris Chaffee from the Redistricting Partners. Chaffee.
Hello.
Once again.
Great to be back. What I'd like to do is go through some of the public submissions that have come in since we last met. This first one you can see is much like an agricultural interest map that we've seen before, which includes Lodi and goes down and includes the eastern part of the county. This map, again, it looks a lot like the current district lines. There's a slight difference because Lodi is in the teal district, the western district, rather than in District 4, which would be the lighter green. But you see the 2 Stockton seats, and the magenta district is very similar to District 5, which has Mountain House, part of Manteca, I believe, and of course Tracy. This district map, again, is a little bit different. Has like a northern agrarian rural district based in Lodi with a little bit of Stockton. Has a similar district in northern Stockton. Has a District 1 or similar district to District 1, and then you have an eastern teal district that includes Ripon, Lathrop, and kind of the rural areas. And again, you have the magenta district that includes Mountain House, part of Manteca, and Tracy. And
that takes in Lathrop and Manteca as whole, and going into District. What is District?
Teal. Yeah, I'm sorry. I switched Manteca and Lathrop.
Fine.
Again, here's another district with that same like reverse L, or the 7 that we've seen in that first map. You again have another magenta district based in Tracy, but this goes north and includes parts of the Delta. And again, you'd have 2 kind of Stockton-based seats, and a Manteca Lathrop seat as well, with parts, I think, of South Stockton. This is another district that another kind of makeup that we've seen before. Again, two Stockton seats, a Lodi teal seat, a rural seat that includes Manteca, Ripon, and Escalon, and then again a district, kind of like a District 5 seat that has Tracy, Mountain House, and Lathrop. And the reason I'm using kind of the current lines as a descriptor is just because we've all, I think, seen that map before, and I want to compare it to something you've seen and probably have a little bit more knowledge of, rather than trying to compare all of these to the 3 draft plans that you'll be seeing in a minute. This is, again, very similar. One of the things I think we have to realize in some of these maps that I haven't talked about, like this one, has a max deviation of 14%. So it's you can see the magenta district is just 22,000 over. So it, to start with, couldn't be a good basis. Here's another map very similar to the one we've already seen. And now we're going to get into a little bit of COI submissions. This one is the Linden area. Very cool and close community was their submission on the description. And I think a lot of Linden is included whole in most of the district plans we'll be seeing. This district is a community area of River Island. And I believe, again, this district most of the time will be included with Tracy. Sometimes it may move into a western district depending on the draft plan. Repeat. Again, you're seeing a lot of this district like this with the 7, with Lodi connected to Ripon and Escalon, with a Tracy. This looks like it has part of Lathrop and part of Manteca in it. Again, two Stockton seats, and then most of Manteca, most of Lathrop is in the Teal district. This plan is, I think, again similar. The magenta district comes across and takes in more of the eastern areas of the county, and this one draws Mountain House up into a seat with Lathrop and Manteca and the Western Delta. A couple more. It's the whole county. I think that may be a plan for the statewide commission to think about. And the final map that we're going to go through is this one. Again, this has an interesting U shape around Stockton, where it takes in most of the Delta, Lodi, and I think touches on some of the eastern census designated places, but then builds a district, the Blue District, based in Tracy, Mountain House, and part of Lathrop, and then has the 2 Stockton seats that you've seen in almost every single plan, and then this yellow district that is most of Manteca, looks like part of southern Stockton, and goes over into Ripon and Escalon. So those are the draft plans that have come forward since we've last seen each other. And one of the things I wanted to do in the presentation is go through kind of the plans that we elevated, the public.
Can we just go back to that?
Sorry. Yeah.
To that slide, please. So I'm assuming, and this is just an assumption on my part, that if we look at the blue, that would be District 5, and the how would these be numbered? Do you have any idea?
I mean, I think you would probably, if you were looking to the current lines, the blue district would be District 5, the magenta district would be District 1, the teal would be 2. I guess that would make the light green would be 2, the teal would be 3, and the yellow would be 4. I think the teal and the yellow districts, I think technically Lodi is in District 4 right now. So it's a question of like how you number those 2.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
Chris, were any of the publicly submitted maps that we just looked at evaluated against the VRA requirement?
These weren't. We received them in the last couple days, but we will evaluate them and come out with basically a data set for each of them with deviations and and CVAP totals.
Thank you.
Question, Chairman, Mike Morwitt.
Yes, Mr. Morwitt?
Okay, just for clarity for everyone, are we gonna use color coding from now on? And if so, can we get like a legend that just spells it out so we can continue, so everyone knows, including myself and the public, what colors we're gonna correspond? Unless we number them.
I was only going to use colors because of that's the districtor maps, but as you'll see going forward, all the draft maps are numbered 1 through 5.
Okay,
You understand that, Mr. Morwitt?
yes.
Any other
Well,
questions, sir? Thank you. Does anyone else online have a question? Bollinger? Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Chaffee. Yes, sir, Mr. Grinsky.
I'm sorry, I had a question. I had my hand raised. Esau Hernandez?
Yes, Mr. Hernandez.
Okay, in the first presentation, I
We'll
seen
come
that
back.
I seen in our first presentation, we were trying to say that we weren't going to be diluting District 1. How does that happen if we can draw these maps and then name them totally different different district numbers? How does I guess my question is there a rule that number 1, that District 1 has to remain in that area? District 2 has to remain in a certain area? I mean, because the map that I'm looking at right now that they're sharing, I mean, it's a total different map. I mean, districts are in total different spots.
So these are just the publicly submitted maps. As Commissioner Oster pointed out, these haven't been evaluated for VRA compliance at this time. But just looking at this map, the magenta district, I don't think would have a Latino CVAP of over 47.7, given the districts that we've drawn included in the draft maps that are coming soon.
Okay, just a reminder, I allowed the question to be asked, but going forward, the questions will only be addressed to those on the dais and not to the alternates. So just for clarity as we continue and making sure that we're doing the process correctly.
I apologize. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Mr. Grunsky.
Yes, again, just the question of how many public maps have actually been submitted. If this is not the time for this question, Chair, please say so, but I was just curious while we're going through the...
Go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, just how many maps total have been submitted from the beginning of our outreach process from the public? The county, I think of what, 750,000 or so?
I believe it's over 20. I don't have the over 20 map. Or actually, Dave, do you have?
Yes, approximately 40, including COIs and district plans.
Does that seem in line with other counties of this size? Is this a low? Is this high? I think some of the concerns from public comments we had were, basically public outreach questions. Is there a reporter here? Is there things of that nature? So is 40 maps is that low? Is it high? First time on a redistrict, asking for a friend.
Got it. I think, so just some caveats to the answer to start. This is the first time we've used the Fair Maps Act. It's the first time we've had public mapping tools like Districtor and others available free to the public, pretty much nationwide. But I would say that San Joaquin has had, I would say, similar outreach and similar number of maps submitted for other counties its size. I think, some counties, if you can believe it, have 4 or 5 maps and are 3 times the size of San Joaquin at this moment. where we've seen the most, well, for the clients that we were working with, I think the city of LA has the most, and it's well over 200, but they are also much larger than the county of San Joaquin, right? And so I think San Joaquin has done a really good job of doing public outreach. We've had really good, I think pretty good attendance, both in person and online. And the number of maps, I think you'll only see more of an increase as we start introducing draft maps. We've seen throughout the state that the COI submissions, the ones we've gone through, we haven't had as much submissions as we kind of thought. But I think it's because when you start introducing draft lines and you start creating a border and saying you're in this district and maybe your friends or neighbors are in another, or your family's in another, then people are much more engaged and much more interested. So I think it's just kind of the process. And I would say that given that we've, I think, had 13 new map submissions in the last 2 weeks, you're starting to see that crescendo of public comment.
Hi, Beck. Great question.
So these have been interesting maps presented by the public. And in one case, for example, I noticed that the title gave a clue to how the drawer was thinking when it was Ag for All. And it would be, will we as a committee have the opportunity to discuss principles that we in San Joaquin County would like to consider in addition to those that are imposed upon us, rightly, by the state and the nation, before we get too far down into specific matters?
Yes, I think when we were in Lodi last, I think we talked, you had a lot of good points on what you wanted to see with district maps coming forward, draft maps or draft plans coming forward. And we really tried to create binary choices with these 3 options, looking at publicly submitted maps, taking into consideration the Voting Rights Act, and trying to make sure we're in compliance, of course, so that any draft map we show you could be passed and would meet legal muster. And so it's taking into consideration those themes that you provided us, trying to look at the schools of maps that have come forward throughout the process, so that we can give you options. And then you can, I was hoping tonight we can go through each of those options and you can say, I like Plan A, or I like Plan C, or whatever it is. And we don't, as a commission, we don't want to see this other plan come forward. Thank you for the thought experiment, but it didn't work. And so for our next session, it would be great to focus in on 1 or 2 of these draft maps and say, I really like this, but you needed to make these changes for our next round. So maybe we have map A2 and map B2, or however you want to go.
I'm going to direct a question to Mr. Bollinger. I just happen to be looking up and down the dais. I see the map that's in front of me is the same map that's up there, but everyone on the dais has a different map. What it is?
Yes.
You're viewing the monitor off angle, and so
This was a test.
Yeah, you have to look.
I wanted to see if you guys are paying attention.
Greatly appreciate Chair keeping them on their toes. Audio visual is on point. It's always good to keep them guessing.
Oh. Mine looks different. Thank you. Mr. Chaffee, you want to continue on with the publicly submitted maps?
These were the publicly submitted maps.
Okay, so
I think we can move, if there's public comment Probably good.
Have any comments, any public comment? Yes, ma'am. Did you have comment? Do you have a, question on a specific map? Yes, sir. Linger?
Yes, I wanted to state for the public that we do have a redistricting website, wedrawthelines.sjgov.org, and the link to our District R mapping tool that is what was used to create these maps is available there, and the entire gallery of all submissions are there. They're also posted on the maps page of the website in a more summarized form, but if you go to the District R tool and view their gallery, you can actually interactively explore these maps and zoom in or alter them if you wish and create derivative plans of your own.
It's a great point, but I'm a person who doesn't get online or do not have the ability or do not have computer. How can I do that and have that be visible to me? Just using myself as an example. I do have all of that, but I'm just asking if that. Is there a way that
Could print them on request.
print them on request? Okay. Please.
So you could also view them at a county library or a district office.
Okay, so any one of the county libraries would have those?
Yes, because they're available online.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I don't want to be presumptuous to fully understand what our question was from a member of the audience, but I'm feeling that to be dynamically engaged in the discussion will be very helpful to see contrasting maps together. I can understand why you don't want to print out 17 maps, but hopefully in the future, when at our next meeting, when we come in and we're talking about, say, 3 specific maps, that we're able to see them either on the screen or in paper. Did that help address your concern, ma'am?
Thank you. Do we have a question in the back? Okay. Anything else, ma'am? Thank you very much. Kathy? Yes, ma'am. Yep, would you please come forward so we can get it on record, or there's a microphone coming to you.
Didn't we see one map that had Lodi on the north, and it was smaller than it is now, so that maybe our votes would count more? Whereas this one shows it all green.
I'm sure when we get down to the maps that are going to be presented, because these are all individual maps that have been presented by the public, and Mr. Chaffee is going to have those maps that the group put together.
May I share a quick experience?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. The late Chris Gutierrez, I think, was the head of the Lodi Wine Grape Growers. I saw him go to the meeting in Lodi Council when there was a threat of lawsuits, and somebody was saying this idea of emphasizing different ethnic groups, and he stood there. He took the map of Lodi and he says, "My wife is a teacher and I'm a grower. Lodi needs to be one district." I thought that was really cool, because we need to be unified. Divide and conquered is a certain political group that I want to say, but looking like divide and conquer.
Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Mr. Chaffee?
So now for the main event of the draft maps that we've been talking about for many weeks now, I think. So the agenda for this portion of the presentation, just a refresher quickly on the Fair Maps Act, and then jump into the 3 draft plans, and then talk through next steps and talk through your discussions of those draft maps and the revisions you'd like to see be made before our next meeting. So all of these draft maps that are coming before you will meet the Fair Maps Act requirements and be compliant with the Federal Voting Rights Act. And just a refresher of those Fair Maps Act requirements is one that we want the districts to be relatively equal in size. And we have that tool, a 10% deviation tool, to help balance these other elements of the Fair Maps Act. All the districts have to be contiguous. There's no hopping or jumping. They need to maintain communities of interest. They need to follow city and census designated place boundaries as much as practical, and their appearance should be compact. Now, all the maps we're providing you are compliant with all of those criteria, but the biggest thing we need is feedback from you on those draft plans, and to get towards that recommended map to the Board of Supervisors. Now, I just wanted to go through some of the overarching themes that we've had throughout the outreach hearings and through discussions from this commission. One is really the idea of uniting Tracy and Mountain House. Now, actually, before I go through all of these, I just want to point out that these are themes. They don't have to be followed in every map, and you can disregard some of them if you'd like, depending on you're the commission. So I'll follow you or your lead. But these are some of the themes that we've seen throughout. So uniting Tracy and Mountain House in a district to respect the rural and agricultural areas and their unique interests within the county by creating a western and an eastern rural district. The possibility of creating a commuter district linking Mountain House to Tracy and to Western Ranch and South Stockton. And then just the understanding that Stockton must be split due to its population size, and that to divide Stockton, we could look to the Lodi USD lines or major thoroughfares or neighborhood lines. So those are the overarching themes, and the next thing I wanted to show you is just the current lines as a way to start. You can see, starting in the south, District 5 has Mountain House, Tracy, and portions of both Lathrop and Manteca. Moving north into District 3, you have the majority of Lathrop and Manteca. In District 4, you have, again, that 7 with Lodi and the eastern portion of the county included. And then Districts 1 and 2 split Stockton. District 1 is a southern Stockton seat with French Camp in it, whereas District 2 is the northern Stockton seat. And just reminding you of our current deviations, because of the growth in District 5, it is 14.1% overpopulated according to the ideal population at this point. Whereas District 4, even though it did grow, it didn't keep pace with the rest of the county, and so it is underpopulated by 7.6%. So you have that 21.7% total deviation, which means that your current lines are out of compliance, and we have to be here making changes. So the first draft plan, what we like to do whenever we conduct a redistricting is start with publicly submitted maps and plans and try to elevate them to be compliant with all of the criteria we've gone through. And so that's what we've done. Working as a team, we've selected 3 publicly submitted maps to elevate and to slightly alter to be in compliance. The first one is map ID 48331. This is Plan A. So you can see this is the districtor version of Plan A. And the final draft map is here. So again, starting from the south, this plan unites Tracy and Mountain House, keeps Lathrop whole in District 5, has Manteca whole with an eastern portion of the district, of the county, excuse me, in District 3, and has kind of a northern rural district based in Lodi with parts of northern Stockton included. District 2 has the Delta, has part of the Delta in it, and is northern Stockton. Now you'll see that District 1 in this plan, this is the seat that we've been talking about. It's the federally compliant, or the VRA compliant district. It is identical in all 3 plans. So it includes South Stockton, does not include French Camp, and basically it doesn't change throughout these plans. So we can talk more about if you'd like to see the implications of changing it. So then I wanted, go ahead.
A question about District 4 in this draft Plan A. It comes down into Stockton for a region. In a few prior slides, you mentioned that a principal was potentially using the Lodi school district boundaries as an edge. Does that boundary for District 4 in Stockton correspond with the Lodi school district boundary?
It's close, but not exactly, no. But it's used as a guide to some extent. And then this is the same plan, but instead of the cities being shaded, now the current district lines are shaded. So you can see the differences. The draft district lines are outlined in black. So you can see that the major change in District 5 from the current is that it includes Lathrop, all, but none of Manteca. That District 4 has Lodi, or the northern district has Lodi in it, but doesn't include the eastern section. And District 3 is basically Manteca, Escalon, and Ripon. And you can see that District 1 has much of the current District 1 in it. It just excluded some of the agrarian portion, or the rural portions northwest of Stockton proper, and it's also moved the more rural areas throughout the district out of District 1. District 2 also is different because it includes the Delta now, instead of going north and being more of just Stockton itself. So this is you can see the population and citizen voting age population of District A, Plan A. You can see the total deviation is 4.2%, well within the 10% range. And you can see that the District 1 Latino CVAP is 50.3, which will be, again, the same throughout all of the draft plans. Moving over to draft Plan B. Again, this is a publicly submitted plan. It's 49,596. And with this plan, one of the themes that has been talked about a lot is to try to give voice to the rural communities. And this is, I think, an effort to do that. You have like a northern district surrounding Lodi. You have the Southern District, the Magenta District, that includes Tracy and goes all the way over to Ripon and Escalon. I think there was a lot of discussion of this in Lodi when we were there last. And then you have the Teal District that has parts of Lathrop and Manteca in it. And again, you have the two Stockton-based districts. So here is the elevated version of the plan, where we've included a District 1 that's VRA compliant at 50.3% Latino CVAP. But we have incorporated most of the elements of the public map. Again, you see District 5 goes from Tracy to Escalon. District 3 is kind of a wraparound district around Stockton. And I think the interesting thing with this district, this map, is that Mountain House is linked to Lathrop, Manteca, and into a district with Linden, which is a very different construction than the current lines. And you have District 4, another district based in, with Lodi Hole in it, and Northern Stockton as an element. And I think this is the one that looks at the Lodi USD district lines as a way to split Northern Stockton. And then you have, of course, District 2 that is mostly I think it's all inclusive in Stockton, except for the pockets within Stockton that aren't part of the city. Again, here is the current district lines with this plan superimposed on it. I don't know if anybody has questions about that.
Do we have a map that actually shows breakdown where those lines fall?
Yes, I have an HTML version. So if we want to go into boundaries, where, like what streets the
Right.
boundaries are, I can pull up the HTML and we can zoom in.
Okay, that'd be great.
So let me just get through the three and then we can start.
Yes.
So again, here's the breakdown of Plan B, and this deviation is a little bit higher. It's 7% total deviation. Again, you can see that District 1's Latino CVAP is 50.3%. The final draft plan that we'd like to present is the district or map ID 55401. And you can see here this District C plan. It has that 7 that we keep seeing, and a Tracy Mountain House kind of current division of Lathrop and Manteca in District 5. Now, you'll see that this is the elevated draft plan is very different because of a couple different things, but one of the things being the Section 2 seat, which is here, District 4, that really caused a shift that needed to be done to make this compliant. And instead of having an overarching 7, it stops short, right? It has the eastern part in District 1 and Lodi and Lockford and Victor, but it doesn't go all the way up to the northern border, including Dogtown, Ocampo, and Cullerville. Instead, what happens is District 5 kind of does the reverse and does Mountain House, Tracy, and all the way up to the northeastern corner of the district. And this really has the most interesting, I think, District 3 option, where you have Ripon, Manteca, and Lathrop all whole within District 3, and including French Camp, and then it comes up and takes in Murata and Waterloo. This plan was really defined by trying to keep as many cities whole as possible, and using kind of that architecture of the district or map in as much ways as possible. Again, here's the Plan C superimposed on the current district lines. I would say that this is the district plan that has the most differences from the current lines. So you still have a District 5 that includes Tracy and Mountain House, but it goes all the way north to the top of the county. you'd have, I think, instead of, this is called District 1, it's District 4. It's a little bit smaller. And then District 1 and 2 are somewhat similar to the current lines, but the biggest difference is that District 3, that includes Ripon, Manteca, Lathrop, and part of the rural areas around Stockton. So this district plan has a total deviation of 7%, so it's very similar to B's population balancing. And again, in this district, or this plan, District 4 is the VRA seat, and its CVAP is at 50.3. So with that, I just want to go through what you can expect from us going forward. That these plans are online now, that the public can make comment on them, and those comments will be taken in and considered as we go forward to the next hearing where we have revised district plans. And that all the maps, as Commissioner Oster pointed out, will be analyzed for VRA compliance, and a full data set will be provided, so you can understand which ones might work if you want to elevate those for the next meeting. And everything we're doing is working towards that selection of a recommended plan to the Board of Supervisors. And then I just wanted to provide the timeline. So today's the 13th. We'll be coming back in 2 weeks for our next RAC meeting. The revised draft plans will come out a week prior on the 20th for your review and for the public's review. And then we'll have our final meeting on the 10th, where you'll recommend a plan to the Board of Supervisors, and then the board will take it from there. So now what I would love to do is go through changes, questions on the draft maps. I have each of the plans as HTML versions that we can zoom in and zoom out, so you can see major streets and the divisions.
So could you just throw up the maps just real quickly on what you have given us?
So, sorry.
I just have a comment, and I think
like, do you want to start with this, like, map District 3 or District?
I don't care which one you want to start with.
Here, why don't we start at the start? So we'll start with Plan A. I went the right way, sorry.
Last one. Okay, what I was going to say, if you're talking about protection of koi, and you look at this map here, this is probably the one map that protects all agricultural land. If you're looking at the three areas, 1, 5, and 3 again, those are your 3 areas that continue to stay, but 1 and 5, along with 3, protect all in the county. And Mr. Grunsky.
This is a very interesting map, because it's I had envisioned. And a real plus of it is that there is significant ag land in 3 of the districts. Nice. My concern for District 5 is that because of the population in Tracy and Mountain House area, that it would dominate the advisor's attention. So the ag and rural areas of Delta and the northern part of the county not get much attention. So while ag is in there, I'd say that it would be
Yes, is River Islands in, District 5 in that scenario, or is it not?
Pardon? District 5 is partially in there, because under the current scenario, you have 3, 5, and 4. Foster? I assume that answered your question, sir?
Chris, going off of the previous comment about dominating and dilution, we talked a little bit about this in Lodi. This question that was raised of if you consolidate all of the rural elements into a fewer number, in other words, an anti-dilution, to use the terminology, strategy. Let's consolidate the ag into the fewest number of districts so that they are guaranteed to have at least 1 or 2 seats where there's a significant representation of ag. The concern then is if you do it the other way, you say, well, let's divide ag equally among all the districts so that every single district has some ag in it. The question of which is stronger, and offline we had a conversation. I would like to just to clarify that for the record, insofar as questions of dilution are concerned, is it generally considered for an interest like of any kind, not necessarily ag, in general, if you have a COI, if you share it among many districts, to ensure that it has representation everywhere, is that stronger, or is it considered stronger to consolidate it so that it's ensured to have a voice?
I think to answer that question, instead of thinking about stronger or weaker, I look back to the Fair Maps Act. And the idea with the Fair Maps Act is that you unify a community of interest in one district so that its voice is most present for the elected representative of it. So from that spirit and from what the Fair Maps Act has done, I think its guidance would be to put as much of the community of interest whole in one district rather than distributing its interest to multiples. I think the secondary idea of having rural portions in every district is something that kind of predated the notion of the Fair Maps Act. And it's just a different side of the coin.
Can I ask a follow-up, please?
Pardon?
Could I ask a follow-up, please?
Yes, go right ahead.
So playing off that response, which is what I anticipated, is that you would more than likely want to have, and I know it sounds counterintuitive, and I just wanted to have this open issue addressed, which having ag in more districts hurts ag is the simplest way to kind of describe that. In other words, you are diluting ag's interest if you split it up among all 5 districts. So putting it in again, this is a very generalized with all the caveats that are necessary. In principle, we are trying to show a fewer number of districts or consolidate ag into a smaller number of districts to elevate the voice within those districts. So that with that as the context of my question, could we see an analytic tool wherein we could look at, let's say, this draft map C with population as represented as a heat map feature? So the concern I have, I agree with Commissioner Ibeck. 5 seems interesting to me. It seems like it kind of you kind of accomplish what we're talking about here, that in districts 5 and 1, you have 2 districts with a significant amount of agriculture present. That's good. My concern then is for agriculture, would District 5 really ultimately dilute it because you have such a high percentage of the population just in Tracy that you're essentially silencing this consolidation of agriculture in the north and west of the county by, so if I could see a heat map that showed me how much of District 5 by population is in Tracy and Mountain House, that would tell me whether I felt confident porting a map that was so predominated by Tracy, but that had a huge amount of the agriculture in the same district. Like, would that negate that consolidation effect? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I can produce it right now, but I can get that to you ASAP.
If we could have it by the next meeting, that would
Oh,
be
yeah. Oh, yeah.
fantastic.
And just a point, you are going to pick up a lot of agricultural in South Manteca, all the way to the river, and then all the way up, and then get there. I didn't do it. I didn't do it, just want to say. Hang on one second. Ms. Baird?
Thanks. Can you hear me? Oh, good. Another concern I have in looking at these is the delta, and 5 goes all the way up. And again, I don't know how much Tracy and Mountain House are interested in preserving and protecting the delta. That would be along the lines of diluting the ag.
Okay. We're going to keep the discussion up here, Ms. Shaw, and then when we get done towards the end, I'm gonna bring it back up for comment from the public. So don't forget your questions. Mr. Grunsky?
Yeah, just to, everyone's making really good points about the ag especially, which is a big concern of mine. You potentially have 1, 3, and 5, possibly ag as well.
Yep.
I mean, how it comes out, no one knows. That it's based on not really within our control, but there is potentially 3 ag districts, with 2 and 4 completely being obviously zero chance. That's kind of the question, is should they all have, we're going circular in the conversation, which is important, but there is potentially 3, with the addition of, in District 3 of Marada, Waterloo, Manteca, Ripon especially, there's a very potentially ag district there. 1, looks very ag-related. 5 is a toss-up. But there are some strong, so I have, full disclosure, a lot of farm interests in the Delta. That's where we work out of and my family works out of. And we do, Tracy's does have a strong ag component still as well. It can't be forgotten, as much as Mountain House gets in there with population-wise, always to be, but it will come to individual organizations, how they, the Farm Bureau does their thing and all that, which isn't really not in our purview, in my opinion. But this can be considered a ag-centric map as well, depending on how you look at it.
And actually, I think what's happened, if you just take a look at this map and all you've done is flip-flop that reverse L on 4 and then given it to 5 and then taking it all the way back around the other side.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
I think we would probably be close to of the population in that District 5. And I just wonder from of travel, and of, Anne remembers in late 2000s, there was a assembly district that popped down into Lodi, and it was Lodi to El Dorado Hills. And just the sheer time it would take for someone to, drive from one to another event-wise, or representative, if you have an event in Tracy that you need to be at, an event in Woodbridge.
Mm-hmm.
The sheer time, say you're traveling at 7 p.m. on a weekday, you'll never make it.
Yeah. Assemblymember Huber could never cover that district, no matter how many field reps we had.
Exactly. And so this map does not make sense. Woodbridge and Lodi, I live in Lodi. I work out in Woodbridge. It takes 5 minutes to get from my house. Why would that be 5 minutes away versus Tracy on a good day would take me 45 minutes? On a good day.
Can I add one comment? One feature of this map that I think we haven't brought up yet, you mentioned it a little bit in your comments, Chris. The strength of having Ripon, Manteca, Lathrop, and French Camp all in the same district, generally speaking, that is an extremely attractive element of this map. that, it seems like, something that I had not considered even possible with the way that Tracy and Mountain House were going to predominate whatever district they were in. I didn't think you could get it done. I played with this map for 6 hours. I never came up with any map where Ripon, Manteca, Lathrop, and French Camp were in the same district. Whoever came up with the original map, I give them full credit, and certainly to your team for elevating it and making it practical in this way. I'm very impressed because I actually, it never even occurred to me as possible that you could do that, and I think there's a lot of merit to that.
And
Another thing
come
for
here,
me
and then Miss English.
is keeping the cities whole as much as possible. We know we can't keep Stockton whole, but it seems to me we shouldn't be splitting up these little cities like Manteca or part of Mountain House. I mean, it seems to me that whenever possible, we should keep our cities whole.
Excellent point. Ms. Albeck, and then we'll go to Miss English.
So the question on my mind right now in the context of Lathrop and Manteca and French Camp being in the district is how much in common does Manteca and Lathrop have versus Lathrop and Tracy and Mountain House? I have a sense of Lathrop, Tracy, Mountain House, and even French Camp to some extent being on the commuting corridor, and Manteca more ag-oriented, but I don't live in either place. Someone who lives in Manteca, comment on the shared interests or different interests between Manteca and Lathrop.
Well, when I look at our communities, our communities have, between ourselves, I'm going to say over the last 5 to 7 years, have grown to work tremendously, you know, in unison as we continue to look forward. Now, when we take a look at the ag piece of that, and I'm looking South Manteca all the way to the river, and then start to go west. That's when you start to pick up the agricultural piece. When you look at SSJID, who is the water source of the district that provides water to Tracy, Manteca. I'm not sure if they finally put something together with Tracy. I know they were working with Escalon on that. We continue to see that grow. Now, you know, I also have played around with this, and I didn't come up with this concept. I was trying to keep Manteca whole and trying to keep every city whole as we continue to go forward. The last one that I played around with was that map that was taking Tracy Mountain House up through Lathrop and then towards up north and then out by the airport, keeping it on the west side of the airport and then over to the Delta side, and more or less kept 4, and I even dropped the lines down. So I took in Manteca and everything else, and then got up by the airport and started to run through. I think we've got a map similar to what I was looking at as we continue to look and move on and go forward. But, you know, you start looking at the numbers, and I've had people, you know, asking me about, well, how about this? How come we can't do this? And I'm going, believe me, I'm not going to jail for anyone. Those districts are going to stay contiguous. You know, we're not going to drop somebody out in left field and then have somebody else go pick that up. I go, that just doesn't work. And what is contiguous? So you explain it to them, you know, and what you're trying to accomplish. And there's some very interesting points on here. I'm like others that I look at this and I say that's that reverse L, and I'm thinking, well, we gave up District 4 and you go all the way to Walnut Grove and 4. Now you've taken 5 and all the way up and taken that responsibility. Unlike some other speakers that have commented that on a good day, you might, spend a considerable amount of time on the road, and yet you're trying to cover it, because you get to the outlying areas, no one out there, and your population base is just not there. And so you just have to keep drawing those lines in order to get you there. Just English.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I agree with Ann, because I think she mentioned at the last meeting in Lodi about keeping the so great job, because I'm like, I looked at it as like, no, but then this is the one that is keeping the cities intact. And even though Manteca and Tracy are still growing in population, you know, I mean, things are gonna change drastically in the next 5 years. I know Mountain House is closer to county, but Tracy does have a huge population of ag. It really does.
Yes.
And we have to watch out for the water. And there are people that want to preserve, you know, our wildlife, and we actually have wildlife right outside of Tracy, and people are constantly fighting for that, you know, from Tracy. I can't speak for Mountain House, but I mean, this might work, this one or B. I didn't really take a look at B because I don't have the monitor here, but this one goes back to what Ann was saying at the last meeting, keeping the cities intact. And even though it looks funny there, but it does keep the cities intact.
Just a question, how far off would I be without looking up to say that Tracy and Mountain House, you're probably approaching that 117 to 120 number?
I mean, I would.
Spot on.
Yeah.
That close?
Yeah.
Well, 117,500 approximately.
Yes, ma'am. And then Mr. Grunsky.
I'm ready to move on to draft Plan A for a we don't spend all of our time just on this one draft plan.
Right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a couple things real quick. For one, Stockton is, I mean, we're keeping a lot of the cities together. Stockton is I don't know how many Stocktonians are up here, but it's split into three, at this time, from what I could see.
It's split in three in all of them.
Oh, okay, well, it's inevitable at this point, I guess.
It has
Well, yeah, it's not the worst thing. I was just pointing out, we were saying we're keeping the cities,
Yeah.
you know.
And
And also the Port of Stockton in this, can we zoom in on that? I believe the Port of Stockton is currently split, which I think is, not the best thing. Considering it's a logistical hub and they might be dredging that at some point to get some bigger ships in, should probably be in one district.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, that looks.
Port.
Yeah, correct. So that looks like it's all one district, am I right?
I think it's in District 4, right?
You're correct, yeah. So you're.
Yeah, I think so. We can make sure that, the whole port is contained in one district.
Yeah, that's, it hasn't been submitted as a community entrance. I believe, it's split up as two, whether you consider the port proper or the outside port. It is split in two. It is a logistical big time deal, and it should be in one district. And then, and my final question is, who up here drew this map? Someone drew this map. It's a very good, someone, there's 40 maps submitted. I don't want to know how many came from up here. But this is really, the reason we're talking about this map so much is because it's a fun map. I think a lot of us spend too much time when we get on District R adjusting what the current map is versus thinking out of the box. But luckily that's your job, not ours. And that's it. We can move on.
And is the airport in 4? Okay. That was my question.
Do you want to move to draft
Yeah.
Plan A?
Let's go to A. Yep, we'll get back to you. Pardon? Okay. We'll get to you. We'll get to you. About District 5? Okay, we'll get back to you. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so this is, Plan A, and I think, one of the things about this plan is, again, it unifies all cities except for Stockton.
Yeah.
It's a different combination, right? You don't have the Lathrop, Manteca, Ripon, whole, but you do have Mountain House, Tracy, and Lathrop whole in this plan. You have Manteca whole with French Camp, in the eastern part in District 3. And then you have, again, that District 1 that you'll see all the time. And District 2, I think the difference with this one is it includes that central delta portion. And then again, you have that northern district with Lodi, northern Stockton, again, another portion of the northern delta within the county, and the rural areas surrounding Lodi.
So I'd like to convey how much I like this map. And no, I did not submit it. But it has two strongly ag districts, 4 and 3, which I think, pardon? Well, and 2 and 5 have significant ag issues in them as well. I like the fact that those who are part of the commuting hub of our county, which very well continue to grow over time, but given its size right now, this seems to be a very nice way of letting that community shared interests have a strong voice. So I'd just like to give my thumbs up to.
You are correct. You now have moved the ag basis into 5 and 2.
Question, Chairman?
Hang on a second, Mr. Morwitt. We'll go to Mr. Oster and Ms. Baird, and then to Mr. Morwitt. And do we have anyone on this side? Thank you.
Just a very brief question. Chris, is there a way for the 3 draft plans that were presented to show, again, another analytic that will just help us to kind of conceive of how these are different? I'd like to know the longest line. If we could do a GIS kind of a trick to just measure what is the longest line in each district and compare that between the maps. I'd like to know, in other words, I'm looking for compactness.
Yeah.
So if we recall the distance between Tracy and the northeast part of in the Plan C that we just were talking about previously, the distance is quite significant. This one, I think, has the feature of being more compact, closer to circles and squares than to, odd dimensions. And so I would like some way of quantifying that impression I get that this map, the 5 districts are more like a circle and the other ones are more like weird angles.
Yeah, we can produce, there's a couple different ways you can measure compactness, and we'll do the standard measures for each of the drafts. And the other thing I think we'll do as well is the number of city splits between the plans, so you can see that in a number rather than just visually.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, Ms. Baird?
I like this map a lot. Not only does it not split most of the cities, but it gives a couple of districts the delta when it runs 2 out to the west and then 4, and it's a great fit for the district with Lodi, which has all that rural wine country, and then the delta. I like this map a lot. The only thing that makes me laugh is that I see that Victor and Lockford are split. I mean, how many people does Victor have? 25, maybe? Probably has more horses than people own Victor. But anyway, I think that's hilarious. But I don't think Victor will mind.
We'll go to Mr. Morwitt, and then we'll come to the dais.
Oh, okay,
Chair,
Chris.
just a quick announcement that it's 7:45, just to bring time to your attention.
Thank you. Mr. Morwitt.
Yeah, Chris, could you zoom in a little bit on that for us at home here?
What part of the map?
Well, just the whole thing. I mean, a little bit. So it would just be a little easier. So Tracy basically does Tracy, Mountain House, and Lathrop. Is that what I see?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then Manteca takes in Manteca, Escalon, Ripon, and then goes up north.
Yes.
Okay. And then, so that was the big its situation with the growth. So I too feel this is least representation. We don't get the split of the cities, and also it makes more sense for 5. The other previous map was way too large of an area geographically to cover, I believe, for any representative. It feels like this map draft A seems to be a lot more compact, and doesn't do as much splitting of the cities, except for Stockton, of course. But yeah, I think this was one of my favorite when we talked about it the first time around. So that's all. Thank you.
Could you zoom in on Manteca, and as that, I'm just wanting to know if that's Airport Road, is that line?
Sure, actually, let me.
Looks a lot like
When
it
we
follows
get
the
done,
railroad tracks down through there.
Answer this question, we'll go to Mr. Grunsky.
Yeah, it appears
no,
to be
sorry.
railroad tracks along the city limits.
Pardon? It's,
It appears to follow the railroad tracks along the city limits between Lathrop and Manteca.
okay, all right. Mr. Grunsky.
Yeah, can we go back to the map and, question, if possible? Yeah, so right here, I mean, what I liked about the other map, which I did not think I would really like the other map until we got into it. The delta's split up 3 different ways here. We're one community, really, delta, water fights. That's a community interest. I mean, a political entity at this point. I mean, not for any particular side, but it's a very unified front, I think, in all delta rights and water rights, and that's where all those battles are going to be. I think with the amount of stuff that I've seen approved in the Plan Commission, you're going to see a lot of growth in the Mountain House area. So you're looking at it and you think you got 3, possibly 4 ag seats, and you could be very disappointed that over the next coming years, just because it might not be there. 2 will get swallowed up by Stockton. You won't have, that won't be a seat. It looks good on paper, but we should take a hard look at it, because there's a lot of things that I see that could be where I think we were talking about, where your ag just gets chewed up. You think you got a bit in every district, but when it comes down to it, that voice could be small.
That is an excellent point, because when you start talking about the water on the delta and the ag that is out there.
Well, I mean, you know as well as I do, we are on current water restrictions.
Yep.
And so the Tracy farmer and the Delta farmer, we are one and the same as far as, my customers are the same as theirs, and we are Delta. We consider ourselves Delta. I don't consider anyone a Tracy farmer or a Delta farmer or Stockton farmer. So you're on the islands, right?
Ms. Benino?
I like this map. I would love to see Oxford into somehow, not quite. But surrounding areas. On 88, when they go out there to get locked. But, and I would also be interested to see a map of, like, ag interest in the county, like where the wine grape growers are versus cherries versus asparagus, like you're right, almonds, apples. Like, is there any type of map that, because I think those are also communities of interest that we should try to keep growers together. And
I did send out an email via the Chief of Staff of Chuck Wynn's office to his broad constituents, really hoping to get just what you're talking about. the Lodi community did send in community of interest maps related to viticulture, sort of the wine business. But I did not see anything else come in related to the fruit and nuts.
Okay, Ms. English, did you have anything? I'm gonna go back over to Mr. Oster. Yes, ma'am.
Is it better to have the port and the airport in one? Or is it better to, because they are both hubs, but I don't know, it's just something.
That's why I asked if they were both, airport was in. We're going to,
Chris, could we see in the next meeting, I know you're scribbling notes, an A2 where two things are accomplished on the north part of this map? Would it be possible, and again, I'm not sitting in front of Districtor right now, so I don't know, but could Lockford be moved into the same district as Lodi, while simultaneously consolidating the Delta into only two districts? Those
are my
two,
notes.
yeah, I think Mr. Grunski's point and Ms. Panino's point were both aligned with where I was going with the map. If there was a way to modify 2 and 4 and trim in 5 and 3 in such a way that you could actually maintain the integrity of the map, but keeping the Delta not split into 3 but 2, and consolidating Lockford with Lodi.
So, just as a question for the map to A2, would it make more sense to put the Delta portion in District 2 north into District 4 with Lodi, or south into District 5 with Tracy?
With Tracy.
With Tracy?
Without doubt, yeah.
And then I'm pretty sure, thanks to Commissioner Baird, that I could easily move Victor over into District 3, but Lockford's a little bigger. I don't know if the population would balance to do that, but we can try. The run switch maybe if we moved Lockford into 4, we'd move what is it, Murata, sorry.
Either would work.
Into 3, but I mean.
And Lockford probably belongs more with Lodi anyway.
Okay.
I think that you can make that happen because you can loosen up on 2, bring 4 and 5 together, and you've got the 2 entities that are taking care of the Delta. Yes, ma'am. And then we're going to wrap it up, and then we're going to go back to public comment.
A brief plug for Murata. From 2 different circumstances, I have gotten the sense that Murata would much prefer to be associated with Lodi.
Gotcha. Do you have anything else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, so we're looking at 3 examples. We really worked with any of the others that have been submitted.
These are the ones we've elevated, but if you're interested in having us elevate another public map, we can do that at the next hearing.
Okay. Is that it?
Final quick comment. On this map, if it doesn't take up too much population, you could have 5 come along almost to Ripon.
Taking in, like, that's the rural area below South Manteca?
Correct.
Okay. I think this is another great thing. If there's any other changes you'd like me to try in the revision of this one, or it seems like everyone kind of liked C, or if there are any other changes. We haven't talked about B at all. Should I kind of throw B away?
No. In fact, I'm going to probably send you another one that's got Ripon in it because I've been playing around with.
So then do we want to move to Plan B so we can talk through that and talk through changes?
If I'm looking, are we holding it to our timetables, sir?
We are able to go past 8 p.m. I believe the sheriff will probably vacate, but otherwise, so if those who are comfortable, we can go past the hour.
Okay.
Motion for another 15 minutes?
Got it? Is that okay with everyone? Another 15 minutes? Continue on.
So before we leave A, any other last thoughts?
Hang on, we'll get to you, ma'am. We'll get to you. No, he's not closing. No, we're not leaving. Not yet. But you're going to have your opportunity to speak, ma'am, in public. Thank you very much for being here. Yes, ma'am.
One thing that we haven't gone into depth on is the division between the North and South Stockton and whether or not there's potentially communities of interest that are being violated by that division. We've sort of treated District 1 as fixed, but there's no time today to have that. But I do hope that at the next meeting we can go into depth in the city of Stockton.
Okay, Mr. Chaffee?
Yes, definitely. But, okay, so this, again, is draft Plan B. This is the one this plan splits the most cities. You can see that District 5 is very different than all the other ones we've seen. It includes Tracy, this part, like a very small part of Lathrop, the southern portion of Manteca, and then includes all of Ripon and Escalon. And with the trade-off being that you have this central kind of rural district that wraps around Stockton, includes most of Lathrop, most of Manteca, Mountain House, and then Waterloo, Linden, Peters, and Farmington, with most of the Delta, I think, probably in District 3. And then you have another district, District 4, that has the Northern Delta, Lodi, Marauda, and Northern Stockton again. And then again, you have that D1, D2 combo of this time, District 2 is all of Stockton. This is probably how you'll see that change in Plan A, where the delta will be drawn down, and District 2 will end up looking a lot like this one in that new A2.
Ma'am.
This is my least favorite map because it divides Lathrop and Manteca and takes out more of North Stockton, and I like the other ones because it keeps the cities whole more.
Yeah, I agree. I think that also, I don't think we got two bigger, different communities than Mountain House and Linden.
Yeah.
They're in the same district, and it's like, they're
Yeah.
polar opposites.
Yeah.
I mean, don't show this to anyone from Linden, because I don't want the emails. But
Yes, Ms. Pinino.
Not a bit. The same reason why I think Oxford townhouse. I don't think splitting Manteca, the south parts of each, or Mountain House. Well, in Mountain House, where do they shop? They shop in Tracy. Life in Tracy.
Chair. Chris, I'm just thinking, always dangerous, I know. But if we could see a B2 where there was a way to move that horizontal line across Manteca, if there was a way to somehow move it, I'm making a visual here with my hands, Chris. We could slide it this way. We could somehow, if you brought Mountain House in and traded it for some of the eastern portions of the currently drawn District 5 in this map, would that be sufficient so that you're moving Escalon and Ripon into 3 and bringing Mountain House into 5? Like, I don't know how the populations match up. And to some extent, if you could do that, well,
I mean, that's Plan A. Pretty
Well,
much.
not quite. I'm saying while maintaining this northern schema of the delta, the feature of this that's if you could zoom back out.
Yeah.
The feature of this that is desirable, in my view, I agree this map is extremely problematic for a number of reasons. The things that are good about this are many. The northern part of the district, northern part of the county is all whole. The delta is largely in one district with the western part of District 4, but the delta is less split up in this map. The two Stockton districts are more compact and more containing of only Stockton as much as is possible. Where this map is problematic, I view, is in the bottom part of the map. And the fact that Mountain House and Tracy are divided, the fact that Lathrop and Manteca are divided, and we're putting Escalon in with Tracy, and we were talking about Linden and Mountain House. Anybody been to Escalon and talked to somebody from Tracy at the same time? That's a brawl. So if there would be a way to move Mountain House in and exchanging it with 3 and 5 for some of the eastern portions of the current 5 in this map, but maintaining this element in the north of 4, 2, and 1, I think you could have something really desirable, because I think Mr. Grunski's concern about the delta would be addressed by having a District 3 that somewhat looked like this, at least on the western portion.
You kind of want a mashup of the northern district of Plan B with this, like District 5 and 3 in Plan A, with like the 2 Stockton seats much more compact without the delta. We can explore like an A2 or B2 or, to try to get all of those elements in there. I guess my question is, do you like the idea of Tracy to Escalon? Because I think that's the trade-off, right? Like, if you move Mountain House into 5, then Ripon and Escalon have to go into 3 for population balance.
That's explicitly what I'm asking for.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm explicitly asking for Mountain House into 5 in exchange for Ripon and Escalon into 3.
Okay.
You do that with the map. And again, we still have this problem from the last 10 years of Manteca being split. And my friends in Manteca, if we come out of this process and Manteca is still split on 120, I mean, our chair is here to talk to us about it.
Already started, believe me.
Manteca whole too.
That element of this map is almost a non-starter for this map, because Manteca's been screaming about this for a decade.
It's a non-starter here.
Chair Mike Morowit online is asking to be recognized in the queue.
And then we'll come, Mr. Mooney, and then we'll come back to Mr. Morowit.
Yeah, okay, so can we can go on into district and tweak any of these maps and then resubmit it as an alteration of plan, so that you could look at them later?
These plans precisely aren't in Districtor at this point. You just have the draft plans on the website.
Yeah, we're gonna make him do it.
But you can make me do it.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is, I mean, if you, because you've got a map number there, we can't go to that map number on
No,
just.
you can, they're just not exactly the same. I think the biggest difference, right, is that D1 that we superimposed on all of these plans and then had to create changes to create these draft plans.
Yeah, I guess because you know what I'm saying is, if we could go in and make tweaks that we wanted to and comment, and then they come back to you and you could look at it and.
Yeah.
And, you know what I'm saying, I don't know, it saves some, we could do some adjustments ourselves.
Sorry, they are on there. I misspoke. So they are there, and you can do that.
Okay,
So
and we could put a note that it's from us or something, or
you could just email the body saying, I've submitted plan 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
Okay.
Put it in the title of the map.
We can put in the title that say it's draft plan B and my alteration.
Mr. Mooney.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll go to Mr. Morowit, Ms. Ibeck, and then Ms. English.
Just a quick comment, the last map I said I liked as well. But I kind of agree with Mitchell's to some degree, with Mitchell's, what he had just said as well, making Manteca whole, but giving, Mountain House to District 5. It's pretty hard not to include Mountain House with District 5. Just geographically, it makes sense. And it's a lot of the same folks, kind of goes to that commuter. But the last plan, and I realize Mr. Grunsky made a good point, very good point about the Delta. My question is that can we run like almost a vein between the three districts to bring one together? I mean, is that too odd this question is probably, this is for Chris. Can you bring the Delta together with a kind of a long, narrow stretch? I know it doesn't, does that work? I mean, so that you can kind of keep without having three districts on the Delta? I know it's kind of bouncing back and forth from the other map, but.
I mean, that is illustrated a lot in District 5 in Plan C, where you have the Delta completely unified in the plan.
Yeah, because that's unfortunately, that just makes District 5 extremely large and I think a little bit unmanageable for an elected to handle. I think you would just get kind of lost. You'd be spending all your time in Tracy and then you'd lose a lot of the other places as well. But I do see the understanding of the Delta and how important it is not to have three different votes necessarily on an item that could easily be, knocked down to two. So I just didn't know if there's a way to, it would be a little odd, but it would serve a purpose, a community of interest, which would be the Delta and people there. I'd have to go on there, I guess, and kind of move the lines around to see how the population is. Because if it's just, space, doesn't really count for population. But I'm just, trying to keep certain things together. And water is very, very important to our region. And the stronger the voice is important for the region, even if it doesn't seem that way. I don't see, right now we have an issue, but you never know down the line with electeds what changes and what goes on. So that was my question.
And I think in MAP Plan A2, from all the comments from Commissioner Grunsky and others, to unify more of the Delta in that Tracy district in D5, I think would get to much of the Delta being in one district. So you'd still have part of it in the A map in the District 4 Tracy district, but it wouldn't be split up into three, as in, I think in B, as it is here, and in A, currently.
Well,
so that we can dive in and look at the divisions between these districts in assessing what roads, what communities, railroads, et cetera, are used for.
Yeah, yes, we'll do the same thing going forward, and you'll also have the HTML versions, so that you can, it's like a web map that you can zoom in on, and it will be on Districtor as it is now. And they'll be published 7 days prior, so you'll have that stretch to study up.
If you go looking for these maps in District R right now, they'll be under the drafts section, and they'll all have the preface of flow analytics.
you.